Okay guys, welcome back to GL Garage. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize in advance for the noise. It's pretty windy outside today. We got some storms rolling in this afternoon, so nonetheless, that's not gonna stop us from getting some work done. This video, we're gonna be going over some things about the 7.3, and I wanna take a look at my battery terminals. I've been having an intermittent no start, no crank, but I have had power. Truck just doesn't crank sometimes, so we're gonna start looking at what it can possibly be. Reading up on some forums, they're stating that you should check your battery leads first. In this case, we're checking out the starter wire because that's primarily where I've noticed the intermittent no start is coming from. So that, I got some battery cleaner. We're gonna spray that on there, let it sit for a little bit, clean the terminals up and all that. Then we're also gonna pull the intake tubing off of the intake, take a look at the turbo, see if there's any play in the turbine wheel, and just generally just take a look at the turbo. So here we go. Okay, so right off the bat, I kind of noticed that this wire here has been a little bit intermittent. We're gonna go ahead and clean this up a little bit. It's got a little bit of play in it. This is a 2-watt wire, gets soldered in. I have a spare one in the truck. I just need to go and get a soldering kit for electrical. All I have is plumbing solder, which is not really the same thing. So we're gonna go ahead and spray some of this CRC battery cleaner on there. This is pretty decent stuff. I've used it on all of my vehicles. So we're just gonna spray these terminals down. This has got acid indicator in there, so it'll tell you if the batteries are leaking, or just if there's any kind of battery acid around the terminals. So just spray those on there like so. Let them sit for a little bit, and then we will. I actually wish I had some dielectric grease because that would help. But we're gonna let these sit for a couple minutes. Going to get our wire brush here. I set it over here somewhere in the shop. And as you guys can hear, it's pretty windy out, so weather's definitely rolling in. It's probably gonna get a little more intense. Got a couple of these, so this one looks like it's pretty good. We'll just use this one here. Yeah. All right, so that's where we're gonna start. Got the shop dog in here, so he likes hanging out in the bed, so. Got some of the intake already pulled off. We got 2 8mm bolts back here, which bolt the intake to, I want to say, the engine. So I'm not exactly sure where it bolts up to yet. We're still going to look that out. It maybe looks like it bolts to the cylinder head. So we're going to pull this tubing off here in a second. We'll let these sit, and then while we're pulling the intake tubing, we'll check out the turbo and all that. Okay, so when you take off your intake, if you got a stock factory intake, you have these dowel-like threaded pins. They go into the intake, and then they thread down onto these threaded shafts, and then your filter obviously goes inside there. So you'll take those out, and then start over here, move to these 8mm bolts. I use metric, so we'll just take them out with the 8mm bolts. That one might be a little bit of a problem. We'll have to grab a wrench for that. Take those 2 out, undo the clamp here. As you can see, I've already got it kind of loose, and then pretty much you pull the intake off from this portion, and then you have the back where the turbo is. So here we go. So now that we got this intake boot here, we just got to loosen this one now. Pretty much this is the only piece holding it to the actual air box. Pop this off just like so. And bam, intake box ready to come out. So it's pretty dirty, I know. Like I said, just picked this truck up a little while ago. We're loosening up the next intake piece here, or clamp, I should say. So many clamps on this thing. Got some oil in there. It's usually pretty normal. And there we have it. So this intake piece right here goes to the back of the turbo. Obviously, we get a little bit of oil in there. That's all pretty standard from the crankcase, and then blow by doesn't help that. But there it is. There is our turbo. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do our wiggle play test. And just an FYI, if you're wearing any kind of slick boots, I'm wearing regular combat boots. This chrome bumper here is pretty slick. My boot slides on and off of it pretty well, so combined with like the dirt and dust on the floor. So what I would recommend doing if you're in the same situation as myself, I just now thought of this, so bear with me here. Get you a piece of handy dandy duct tape or any kind of adhesive tape that's gonna stick. And we're gonna do this. If I can get this to pull open, just gonna place this down and make yourself a non-slip surface. It'll save your kneecaps in the long run, so boom, we'll leave it just like that. Yeah, that's much better. So here we go. Okay, so as far as I know, this is just the factory Garrett turbo. Not exactly sure which model it is, but it is still pretty small. It does spool up pretty quick, which is nice, and it's not taking a beating on the engine. So that also kind of confirms my theory. The engine is all mostly stock, with the exception of some aftermarket parts, not necessarily for performance-related capabilities. But nonetheless, we're going to check out the turbo. We're going to do our little wiggle plate test on the turbine wheel, make sure that the turbo is in good condition. Something else too, with turbo diesels, whenever you're done driving after a long distance or you've been driving around the block and spooling it up like crazy, when you park the truck, you ideally want to let it idle for a few minutes at a time, just so that way the turbo oil has a chance to cycle through and cool the turbo down. Otherwise, if you just shut the truck off after driving it and beating on it and ragging on it, you're gonna basically cook the turbo. So don't ask me how I know. Okay, so let's see if you guys can see it here. So here's our Garrett turbo. Looks pretty stock to me. So let's go ahead and give it a little wiggle test. Check it out. It is pretty hot, so I'm gonna grab a pair of gloves here. Okay, I got this long pair of silicone gloves. We'll just try these out. We're only just checking it for a couple of seconds, so hopefully it don't get burned. So here we go. Oh wow, that's actually pretty solid. Yeah, actually no. As I spin it and do that, it's kind of got a little bit of wiggle. Very, very little wiggle, so that's generally a good thing. Something tells me that this turbo may have been replaced at some point in its lifetime. So, and as you guys can see here, blades look pretty good. So I don't think that's too bad there. So, yeah. That looks good to me. Skunk also agrees that the turbo is in good shape, so what do you think, Skunk? Huh? You boiling? You a little warm? Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to check out on the turbo itself. So we're gonna go ahead and reinstall the intake and all that. Just clean out any little debris, make sure there's nothing else that can get past the air filter and into the engine. Potentially damaging the turbo or just doing anything to the valves or pistons. So sand is not a good thing to get in the engine because it will wash out cylinders. Only daily driving this temporarily, just so that way we can get the S10 fixed, get the cam sensor issue fixed, the wiring, so that way we have a good oil pressure reading, we have accurate fuel level, and then we'll be doing the steering gearbox and a couple other suspension components. So all right, let's go ahead and get this intake back in here. All right, so now we get the intake back on. We're gonna leave this piece off for right now just so we can clean the battery terminals up. So we're gonna go ahead and take a brass brush. This is what you wanna use anytime you're cleaning battery terminals. It just works the best. So you just take a brass brush and just start kind of rubbing this all, kind of scrubbing it down, and that way it's got a good connection and all that. So go ahead and fast forward through this, and then you guys will see the aftermath. Here we go. Battery terminals are cleaned off. We got them cleaned off, looking pretty good. Got the last little intake ducting piece hooked up. We're gonna go ahead and fire this truck up and see if we get the intermittent start at all. Some days it's hit or miss. It also plays into part, the batteries aren't fully tied down and bolted down. The truck didn't come with those. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look and see if maybe that might be a potential cause after driving down the road. We'll take it down a bumpy road and see what exactly happens, but I'll do that on my own time, but let's go ahead and fire it up and see what happens here. So go ahead and sit in here, and I don't have the keys on me. Great. All right, so I got the key stuck in here. Good power, everything's coming on just like normal. Wait to start light is out. Let's go ahead and fire it up. Started right up on the first try, so might not possibly be that terminal. It might actually potentially just be the, let's make sure this is in neutral. It might just potentially be corrosion on the battery, those kinds of things. But yeah, I mean, it's doing what it's supposed to, so that's a good thing. But that's pretty much going to be it for this video. If you want to see more content on the 7.3, like I always say, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the post notification so every time I post a video on the 7.3, you guys will get notified. Make sure you check out Midnight Accelerators. Link will be in the description. Check out the Super DJ Chan channel. That's where the Black Knight project is. Plenty more videos coming for the S10-02. Next video, like I said, we're going to be doing some ignition stuff. We're going to be pulling the distributor out, checking out the cam sensor wiring, oil pressure, and fuel sensor wiring. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Shop Dog will see you guys in the next video.
Yeah. God dang it!